Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So for today I think we're going to rename the episode something like Rubbish Rescue or Recycling something or other. Leave your suggestions in the comments if you feel bored. So what I'm actually doing is this is a battery charger and it had a power point in it. It was out of a caravan that got upgraded to lithium. So this is an old school battery charger, and obviously these old battery chargers can't handle lithium batteries, but I've got a couple of lead acids in here, and obviously it's also good for car batteries and that sort of thing. So I figured I would repurpose it and put a just put a battery cable, put a power cable on it, and a couple of battery plugs and connectors and stuff, and use it in case someone's battery goes flat or the batteries in here get run down. Because I run this workshop off solar, so if I run out of solar and if it's been too cloudy and the batteries haven't been taking a good charge, then at least I can top them up. So the funny thing, when I actually pulled this apart in the caravan, this fell out of it. So for those of you that know, I'm not going to obviously bore you with too many details, but for the rest of you, so you can actually see how, firstly you can see how old this is, because that says 99. So this has been running around in the back of a caravan since then. But when I pulled it apart, this fell out of it. So this is the main filter capacitor for the power supply. So instead of having a power supply sort of thing that looks like a wave, then it flattens it out so that it'll charge properly. So some things don't like having what they call too much ripple. Some things don't mind it too much, but this has been running for I don't know how long with no filtering whatsoever. So I can't actually put this one back in because the legs have actually broken off. This one's broken off right at the base, so I've actually got to replace it with so I've got to replace it, period. So I found in my tub of bits and pieces a couple so this is a 10,000 microfarad capacitor. I found two 4700 ones, so that's going to be close enough. And I was worried about having to drill another hole, but looks like there's a big enough hole there on the board here for me to be able to just put these two in with a bit of bent legs, and I can just put them there because they're not going to be bouncing around, so I don't have to worry about gluing them down or anything. So this had a fascia panel on it that was removed because it had a power point in here. So the power point stayed in the caravan because it's a one of those, it's a earth leakage sort of protection type one, so that stayed with the van. And obviously the whole faceplate stayed, so I'm just going to make up a faceplate to go over the front of this. And obviously the power cord got cut off, so because the power stayed with the van and was reconfigured, I need a power cord for it. So I've got 1,000 power cords, so I'll just wire one of these in. Got the cable clamp to hold it in place, so that'll just go in the holes at the back here, because there was one for into the power point and then one back out again to feed the power for the actual caravan. There's the two cables there for the battery plugs that I'll put on, which will just come through probably that hole there, and then I'll just make up a faceplate to go along here. That'll just be blanked out. There is a thermal reset or current reset. It goes back into that hole there, and then I'll just make it so that it sits there and I can use that. So first thing I've got to do obviously is probably pull this board out and replace the capacitor that was there with the new ones. So we'll just pop this board out. It's just got little plastic clips on it. So when I looked at this, I I was happy because I thought I wouldn't have to worry about taking the little indicator board out because the board wasn't actually connected to it. Now there doesn't seem to be enough room for me to actually get it out. Oh no, there we go. All the cables are just too short. That's okay. There we go. So I'll just wait for the soldering iron to warm up. Alright, desoldering time. One side out. As you might be able to see in the video there, there's a slightly elongated hole there. So that will allow me to get both of them in there. You can see we've got nice elongated holes there. Obviously they made the board in case to suit two different size capacitors, which is great. Very handy for me. I don't do that anymore, that's for sure. Actually, there's an extra hole here. I might put one there and then one there. So that's one kind of in. There we go. They're both in there. Okay. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to sit on the bench doing nothing 99% of the time. Certainly not getting bounced around in the back of a caravan anymore. So I'll just solder those back up now. Alright, that's soldered in. Just cut these extra legs off. So now we'll pull the positive off the cutout here, so then I can put the battery plug on it that I'm going to do. I've done it properly. There we go. That negative is in here, so we'll just drop that out. Alright, that's ready for the new cables to go in. So I got these from the caravan as well, because they used to run an external battery as a backup, and so I've got that as a spare cable. I've just got to split this cable up a little bit more because it's not quite long enough to get to where it's got to get to. Now I know this has got the thermal cutout or the fuse cutout. Sorry, I don't know what this is, whether it's a thermal or a fuse circuit breakery type thing. But I'm also thinking maybe I should put a switch on it because I'm going to have just alligator leads on there. I'm thinking I should put just a brake on it, like a switch, to stop it from potentially turning it on and then having live wire and touching things together that I shouldn't and blowing things up. So I think I'll put a switch on it. So the other change I'm going to make as well is that because this was set inside the van, the battery cables came out this hole here. Because I'm going to have this sitting probably on a bench, I'm going to want the cables to come out the front here instead. So I'm going to put something in there. Alright, so I just found an old power switch from who knows what power supply, obviously. So I'll just use that. So I'll put this power switch in here, and then I'll also have the power cable for the actual battery coming out of here. So probably the next thing I need to do is just build this facial plate that I'm going to build. It's only just going to be a small piece of really thin wood. So it'll be this sort of stuff, because it's only got to obviously cover that. So that's nearly big enough. It will be that way. So yeah, I'll just mark this out and cut it up, and then I'll be able to mount the facial plate on here and then cut the holes for the cables and the switch, obviously. So I'm just going to measure this out now, and it's going to go about there. So I'll just draw around that. There we go. Alright, so now we have the faceplate. So I'll need to put that on so I can mark where holes are going to go. So it's actually got mounting holes here from where the other faceplate was. So I'm just going to reuse those. And I've got some nuts and bolts I think I can use for that. So again, I'm just going to use my very technical, precise measuring department here and mark the holes where they are. There we go, 4 holes. Right, so 4 screws, nuts, bolts. That was a very long process because, of course, I found, I think, 4 or 5 nuts for every screw / bolt I wanted. And of course, I've got all different types from other work that I've done. So of course, you know, they're a different length, and of course I wanted them all to be the same length. And I've got some of the other ones here also of a different length, but with a different size head. And yeah, I just couldn't find them. How many people have had that where you go hunting for screws for hours and you can't find them, and you know you've got them? So frustrating. Anywho, of course, I've also discovered that the holes aren't quite big enough in the actual cabinet. I'll just expand those out a little bit too. And just a piece of waste wood to drill these ones out with. Alright, we'll just do these up, and then obviously the next thing I'm going to have to do is mark out the holes for the existing parts, and then the holes for the other 2 bits that I'm going to add, which obviously being the switch and the battery cable. So these holes will be the same size for an LED. This hole will be just the same size as it is there. So will this one. This one I'll just mark out for the two switches. These ones are 5mm LEDs. So I'm just going to do those for that size for those to go into. I will just confirm that. Yep, 5mm. As per that. Piece of wood is a baseboard again. So just deburring the holes for the LEDs to go through. I have no idea what sort of wood this is. It just came with another package, so I'm just using it. I don't know what size hole that is, maybe a 12mm. So I'm going to cut a 12mm hole in this one. Alright, so now I've got to cut the hole for the switch and the cable. So the cable I think I'll just do... Sorry, I won't think I'll just do. I will do a... whatever size this is. About an 8mm I think. Again, we'll just deburr the hole. Alright, so now I've just got to get that one out and that one out. So for this one, I'm going to start off with my... I can't remember what these multi-tools. Alright, just got to change the bit now for the smaller bit. Alright, last but not least, I've just got to mark the switch out. Right, hopefully that's okay for this switch to go into. A bit narrow one way, a bit too wide the other. Oops. Just as well it's only for me. That'll do. Alright, let's start putting it all back together again now. Now I'm only using a pair of pliers because the socket that I've got that'll fit over these won't go in far enough, so it'll end up coming out of the socket, so there's no point. Of course, I think I'll save the hardest one for last. So next I'll put this indicator panel back in. Just try and straighten up these LEDs a little bit so they're not all over the place. Alright, so that's the indicator panel back on. I think my cut's a bit crooked. Now we'll go the, so I'll just put the board back in, I think, to get the next bit in. That's the board back in, so now I'm just going to put the LEDs in. There we go. And there's the reset. And of course I haven't put my negative wire on the board yet, so of course now I'm going to have to take the board back out. That wasn't very clever. I got distracted because I went out and did a couple of things before so I got a bit distracted and went out and did a couple of things, and now I've come back to it, so now I kind of forgot where I was up to. So next I just drop these wires off the switch. So the switch is in there now. So now I've just got to get a wire to go from the thermal cutout to the switch, and then the switch out to the battery cable. So speaking of the battery cable, here's the battery cable. So I'm just going to cut a length of wire for the switch. And just tin the wires up. Oh, hot. Some solder on the thermal. And a bit on the underside of the switch. Now we'll just solder it up to the switch. Now I'm just going to tin up the wires for the actual battery connectors themselves. And the battery for the positive on the switch. Came off. Now I'm just going to get this negative on, so I'm going to have to take the board out again. Alright, I'm going to have to take the indicator bar out as well. Just because the board's actually catching on it, and I need to rotate it to get to it. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder directly to the pad rather than trying to fit this cable through the hole in the board, just because it's a bit thicker than the hole that's there. And won't do it any harm by being underneath there. There's still plenty of height for it to sit at. One of the LEDs has come out as well. Right. So now I want that cable to come out through that side of the board. The LEDs have come out again, and we'll pull you out. Now that needs to go through there. Juggle to make everything fit again. There we go. Right. So I think I'm just going to try and adjust this mount for the LED bar here. So sorry. Yeah. So I'm just going to adjust this LED bar here so that it goes through a little bit further, just so that it sits flush, hopefully maybe flush with the front of the box. That to be better. Put the LEDs back in for the second time. I will probably put some hot melt glue or something in behind those. We'll just cable tie this the battery cable to the wires that are inside here so it can't move. Alright, so that's the 12 volt side of things done. Now I've just got to do the 240 volt side. So I've got my cable, it's going to go in here. I've then just got to cut it so that, so I've got my cable, 240 volt cable now, so I've just got to get that so the earth goes down there and the active and neutral go up there. Okay, so I'll just put the grommet on this so that it doesn't come out. There we go. So neutral's going to go there, active to there, and then earth will go down there. Alright, that's why it's tinned up. So now I'll just put some more on the terminal here. Alright, so we'll just put these through the terminals on the transformer here. Okay, now we'll just solder that one up. Alright, that's one. Now we'll get the active off. Now let's put the active through as well. Alright, that one's in. Decided to be a little bit tricky. Now I've just got to do the earth. lid on, make it look nice and pretty. Now I need some screws to put the lid on with. I do have the original one somewhere, but I can't remember what they were. Alright, by some fluke I managed to find all the old screws that it came with. Alright, there we go. Better go and find myself a battery to charge, hey? Alright, so I have a battery here. I'm pretty sure it's definitely flat. Like flat, I think. So yep, this battery's got 5 volts in it. So we'll see if it can at least start charging it. Alright, we'll just make sure that we've got the right amount of power coming out of the charger when I turn it on. Don't forget to turn it on. Alright, nothing at the moment, which is right. And then when I turn it on, yep, it's 14 volts there, so that's good. So positive onto there, and negative onto there. And it reckons it's putting in 14 volts. So you can see when I touch it onto the battery that the lights are flickering to show the change in state. Let me just rearrange things a little bit here. So it seems to be accepting a charge. So we'll just leave that there for a while and see if it comes up. I guess the amusing irony on this one is that I'm using my solar system to run my battery charger, to run the charger that's running the battery charge. So the amusing irony is that I'm using my solar system for power output that's running this battery charger, which is then charging a battery. Now this is an old battery, so I'm not actually sure whether it'll be healthy enough or happy enough to actually take a charge, but at least I can see that it's doing what it's supposed to do, and we'll see what happens in a little while. So you can see that the red and yellow down here mean that it's obviously having to work to do the charge. Then hopefully when it comes up to green, if it comes up to green, then at least it'll work. At least I know that it's doing what it should be doing. Alright, well thanks for watching this video about the battery charger. Don't forget to drop me a comment down below, hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.